think we're getting a lot better in the linebacker room, just in terms of picking things up. In this defense, especially all defenses, but in this defense especially, the linebacker, there's a lot on his plate, from the knowledge of the fronts, the coverages, all those things. So what I wanted to see is things carry over from the spring to the summer, and slowly but surely we're not making the same mistakes. That way we can make new mistakes and fix those, and that's what I'm seeing. So I think we've got quality depth. I think we've got a lot of guys competing, which is good. I don't think anybody's comfortable with their spot, which is how I want it right now. And I'm really excited going into scrimmage 1 on Saturday.
We've seen and heard a lot about Eugene Asante, and just what has he kind of done, so far this offseason and in fall camp to really stick out?
From the time I got hired, I don't know if anybody had better energy than he did, maybe on our whole team. I didn't know all about all our guys, but especially him, just because he didn't play last year. There's nothing to go off of. But man, he works so hard in the weight room. He's changed his body. I think last year somebody told me he was more like 205-ish. He's over 220 now. He's really what we like at a will linebacker that can cover and do multiple things. He's not the longest guy, but he's big enough. He just doesn't have a bad day in terms of his attitude ever. He plays the next play when he screws up. But I think he's made those guys around him better. Cam Riley, Wesley, Larry. I think because Eugene brings it every single day, those guys have no choice but to bring it every single day too. So it's been a really good domino effect with Eugene.
To the extent you can talk about it, you've been a part of some Auburn recruiting wins recently. I guess, what has it taken to kind of get some of that momentum?
Effort.
Yeah.
but this place sells itself, man. I've said it before. I mean, I'm very blessed to be able to recruit for Auburn. I'm really passionate about it because it's like living a dream being able to recruit for a place like this. So, we work really hard at it because everybody else in our league works really hard at it. So, we're going to try to keep it rolling.
Another guy you mentioned, Larry, of course, wasn't here for the spring, but just what have you seen out of him so far in his time on the program?
I can tell how experienced he is by how quickly he picks things up. The biggest concern you have when you take a transfer linebacker that isn't mid-year is how quickly can you pick up the defense. And I wasn't real comfortable in taking one after spring unless he was a guy like Larry that had all the production, played a lot. So it's easy to install and teach him things because he's played so much football. He can translate it. We call it this, we used to call it that, da 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 da. So I've been really impressed with his football knowledge. So he's been very consistent. And you can tell he's got a lot of composure. You can tell he's played a lot of football.
How far has this group come since you walked on the field day 1 of the spring?
Man, light years, I guess, because you really didn't return hardly any production, right? And just so you're just ball of clay. The defense is totally different than the one it was before. Not speaking like that was the wrong defense, but it's just different. And so them picking it up is in a much, much better place. We're not where we need to be yet, but in a much, much better place.
We heard Roberts the other day talking about how this is a linebacker-driven defense. From your perspective, just kind of what does that mean to you, and kind of how y'all prepare your linebackers?
We're the quarterback of the defense, right? They've got Coach Roberts is an inside. He's coached inside backers a lot. And there's a lot of checks and things on their shoulders. So it's not as simple as just knowing when we call orange table, I got to do this. It's when we call orange table, I got to do this, and if this happens, I got to get this guy here in A, B, and C. So it's a lot on them, but you can really tell who's embracing that, and they kind of like it. They like the leadership role and being in that. They want that responsibility. So it's been fun.
Austin comes in with SEC experience.
Yes.
Does that come through? You see him out there?
Yes. You can tell he's got an SEC build already, and then on top of that, you can tell he knows how to practice like an SEC player. And I'm really enjoying his tenacity. He's not played perfect by any means, but you can tell he understands the physicality it takes to play in this conference, and that's what I like about Austin.
Going back to Eugene, we've heard guys talk about him, talk about how the suddenness that he has. How valuable is a guy like that in a defense where you said You're gonna have guys that are versatile, up 20 outside and do some everything. Does he bring some of that versatility?
Yes, when I first got here, came in here, I got asked, what are we looking for in a linebacker? And the word I used was dynamic. And that's what he brings. He's dynamic, right? He's not a one-trick pony. He can run. He's physical. He's smart. All those things. We don't want the old school neck roll Mike linebacker in this defense anymore. Not that it's been lately, but that's just you can't win that way. So you've got to have guys who can do multiple things. Just like Austin, you're talking about. Austin can rush off the edge. Things like that, and that just allows us to have a really big toolbox when Coach Roberts is calling the defense.
What are the most important things to see in the scrimmage on Saturday?
I mean, you don't get a ton of opportunities to tackle in fall camp. You know what I mean? It's just that time. It's just that day and age where you don't tackle a ton in practice. So when we're live, we've got to really take advantage of it, and you can't simulate that, right? I mean, when we go out there and we got to tackle Jarquez Hunter, I mean that's about as good of a look as we're going to get. So we got to go out there and we got to execute. But I'm really the tackling by far is what I'm looking for.
Those two guys in the jack spot, how are they different? How are they kind of similar as well?
Talking about what the difference of the jack position and the inside backer position.
No, so Elijah and Jalen.
I got you.
How do they compare?
Yes.
And how are the tool belts a little bit different?
Yeah, I think you're going to see those guys more on the edge than you are on the inside and things like that. Those guys do have to be on the same page with my guys a lot, the inside backers, because their roles. What they're doing on any given play are going hand in hand. They've got to be on the same page. It's kind of like basketball, right? You're playing help defense with one guy and this, that, and the other. So they've got to be on the same page, and then they've got to be really smart players too. That's why it's not a D-line position. It's a jack. It's something totally different, where they've got to be able to do a lot of things. That's why they have one coach and they're not in that D-line room all the time. So they've got to have a lot of football intelligence too.
We've heard communication a bunch. You talked about it. How much does that ramp up when you have the tempo and the speed that you guys do every day?
Yeah, that's great. I think that was a big adjustment. Honestly, one of the bigger things defensively when we first got here that I didn't even think about was, not only are we running a new defense, but they're also facing a totally different offense in practice than they were used to going against last year, right? So they're in the middle of trying to learn a brand new defense, and then they're practicing also at a totally different pace. So it kind of stunted our growth, honestly, on defense in the spring a little bit, But I think we've caught up to it. I think they've learned how, and it makes us better. It makes us better when we go play a tempo team like Arkansas was that last year. I don't know if they're going to be that this year. Ole Miss, people like that. It's going to make us better. So, we tell our kids to welcome that. You know what I mean? This is a great opportunity to get learn versus to learn.
Cam Riley's got obviously played a bunch last year. How would you kind of assess maybe where he's at right now?
I mean, he's competing for that starting spot. He's splitting those one reps a lot. Cam's probably if we were to move one of those guys down in like a jack alignment or a Sam linebacker alignment, Cam would be the first guy up, and he's working at that too. I could see Cam, whether he's starting or not, he probably has a good chance to play the most snaps of anybody in the room just because he's doing multiple things, right? We had a guy at Liberty like that last year. He only started 8 games, but I think he played way more snaps than anybody just because he was always in on something, right? And you need, like I said, those dynamic guys. And what you get with Cam, like you said, is experience, right? He's just playing in a different spot than he was previously, so he's just getting a feel for that more natural linebacker spot.
This defense and the way you guys want to play with the linebackers, does it allow him, a guy like that? You just talked about versatility.
Yes.
To be able to step up and
yes, that guy rushes a lot. That guy rushes a lot. He's in that position a lot. So. And it could even be where you flip which linebackers are in personnel wise, right? Like they got 2 tight ends in the game. We'd rather have Cam in or this, that, and the other, So, but Cam is probably our best candidate when we want to put one of those guys down on the edge. For sure, him and Austin. He's just so long. He's really good at using his hands and stuff like that. And I know we're talking about Austin having SEC experience in another place, but Cam's got a lot of SEC experience here, right? So, he's had a good camp. Cam's had a good camp.
You mentioning guys in different roles, the depth and allowing to play more guys. Is that kind of a focus going in? Like you want to rotate some guys and roll some guys?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot. I mean, I definitely, in a perfect world, it's what I want to do. But at the same time, I'm not going to put anybody out there that I don't think is going to help us. If we only got 4, we'll play with 4. that I think that'll help us win. I'd like to think we're going to have at least 5, hopefully. But yeah, definitely we need to roll. You know, those guys have got to be key players on special teams. You know, the linebackers are usually on every special team. So that's what you forget sometimes is, I mean, that's an extra 15 snaps a game. You know, running down on kickoff and punt and all that other stuff. So they've got to be able to roll on defense because they're also on those special teams.
Is Asante a good example of one of those guys that didn't do a lot last year, but like new staff comes in and it's like he's a new guy, this new opportunity. I mean, it seems like he's a good example of fresh start.
Yeah, and I don't want to air out anything about Eugene's personal life, but Eugene had a tough year last year. You know, he had a tough year, and I think he's just kind of cleared his head. And they obviously signed him here for a reason because they thought he was going to be a great player. And you know, he's just, I don't know, he's just really caught on to it. He's a joy to coach, man. I love coaching him. He's a fun kid. Hopefully, I think he will have a great season, regardless if he's in the starting role, whatever. But I think he's definitely going to help us a lot this year, and Auburn fans should be keeping an eye out for him.
How much has Robert progressed since the spring?
Yeah, he's progressed a lot. You know, Robert's just so young, man. You know, he's you know, I know he redshirted last year, but he was hurt. You know, he wasn't full speed. So to say that he redshirted and learned a lot and this, that, and the other, that's not accurate. You know, he was hurt. So he's our youngest guy, right, in that room because we didn't sign a high school linebacker last year. So Robert's biggest thing is just consistency. He puts things on tape. He looks like an SEC Mike linebacker, okay? But 3 other plays he won't, you know, and that comes with coaching a young guy, you know, and he knows that. But he's getting better every day. He's had his best 2 practices, the last 2 practices, but he's just young and growing.
You worked with Steven Sings
Yes,
at
sir.
Liberty.
I did.
He's not in the inside linebacker room, but you're really familiar with
Yeah.
what kind of player Auburn's getting.
Yes.
What can you tell us about Steven Sings?
Yeah, actually, I recruited Steve. You know, so Steve, if y'all don't know Steve's story, Steve was committed to Virginia Tech. Okay? Had some academic problems. COVID hit, and they waived everything academically, and we swooped in at Liberty and signed him before anybody else signed him. So I mean, he's a Power 5 football player, and Steve is just so genuine and grateful, and he works so hard. You're going to see a crazy motor, man. You watch him and Jalen. They, like, regardless of their athletic ability, they play so flipping hard. Both of them. It is fun to watch. So you're going to get a high motor guy and a guy that's going to leave it all out there every Saturday.
How much do guys like that in Utah? How much do they infect an entire defense when you have guys like that?
Well, sometimes they make other guys look bad, because they're moving at a certain speed, and here comes everybody else, right, chasing the football, right? So you have a defensive meeting, and you can hold those guys accountable. Well, hey, buddy, you weigh 20 pounds less than that guy, and there he goes. What are you doing? And so it's just it's a way you can hold people accountable, and it's infectious. It's infectious. It's not a coincidence that our first day of practice we go out there and Eugene's chasing the football, and we got a few guys that don't. And the next day we got 3 more guys chasing the football. This is how it looks. So it's great. It's great.